You just heard the second movement of Bach's Brandenburg Concerto No. 3. The whole thing. That's it. And that's why this meme exists. This is a real piece of music. The entire second movement is just one measure of common time. Two half notes with a fermata on the second one. And somehow it's still a complete musical idea. So why did Bach do this? No one really knows for sure. Being pressed for time is certainly a possibility. But in the Baroque period, this wouldn't have seemed nearly as strange as it does to us now. There was a much stronger culture of improvisation than we usually give it credit for. These two chords could have come after an improvised cadenza by any of the instrumentalists. Maybe the principal violin, maybe even Bach himself on the viola, but most likely the harpsichordist. Keyboard parts in large ensemble works at the time usually weren't fully written out. Instead, players read a bass line and improvised harmonies above it, often using numbers called figured bass that told the player which intervals above the bass to play. So harpsichordists were already accustomed to improvising quite a bit, and filling in or surrounding these two chords with an ornamental line would have been easy. That's what the players in this recording did. But notice, the improvisation isn't what makes this work. It just fills time around something that already makes sense. That's because there's something special about these two chords in particular. They form a complete musical gesture. This is a Phrygian half cadence, which I talked about in episode 11 of my chord by chord series. It's a 4/6 chord moving to a 5 chord in a minor key. It's a half cadence, meaning it's an unfinished thought, like a musical question mark. We never actually get a tonic chord at all, which does suggest that these two chords likely followed a cadenza rather than being the entire harmonic content of the movement. But that's exactly the point. Half cadences create expectation. They heighten tension and make us feel that the music isn't finished yet, which dramatically sets up the third movement that immediately follows. And what makes this work isn't the chords, it's the voice leading. All Phrygian half cadences have three essential voice leading components. The bass steps down from scale degree 6 to 5, the highest voice steps up from 4 to 5, and another voice aims for the leading tone, moving from 1 to 7. That's all you need, but if there's a fourth voice, it usually moves from 1 to 2. Bach's orchestration has every component. 6 to 5 in the bass line, played by all the cellos, bass, and harpsichord. 4 to 5 in the first violin, 1 to 2 in the second violin, and 1 to 7 in the third violin. So then, what are all these violas doing? They're filling out the harmony with additional linear connections, 4 to 7, 6 to 2, and 1 to 5. But let's look closer. The first viola begins in unison with the highest violin, then leaps down to a unison with the lowest violin, crossing voices in the process. The second and third violas also cross each other. And the first and second violas both leap a tritone, A to D sharp and C to F sharp. Isn't that illegal? I think there's a viola joke in there somewhere. But voice crossing and tritone leaps are often described as breaking the rules. So what's going on? Tritone leaps are far more common than theory textbooks suggest. Bach didn't avoid them. He used them deliberately, especially in tense moments like this. And Bach crosses voices all the time, especially in inner parts like these viola lines. The violas here are simply thickening the texture and adding harmonic weight. The voice crossing wouldn't have been particularly noticeable or relevant. But you know what Bach doesn't do? He doesn't write a single parallel octave or parallel fifth. Because, of course, he doesn't. The cello and basses all play the same bass line as expected. Those aren't parallels. But the 6 remaining violin and viola parts are all independent. Each of them is doing something different. And if we did swap notes in the lower 2 viola parts so that they didn't cross voices, that would create parallel octaves, 6 to 5 in the bass and 1 to 2 in the second violin. Even in a progression with only 2 chords, Bach clearly values line independence. So yes, this movement is only 2 chords long, but harmonically, it's complete. Everything you need is already there, and then some. Sometimes one cadence really is enough. And if you want to dig more into the history and mechanics of the Phrygian half cadence, check out episode 11 of my chord by chord series. And if you look in the description, you'll find links to a set of worksheets where you can practice writing Phrygian half cadences yourself. They're tricky, but once you understand how they work, they practically write themselves. you.